Now that we've had our first tropical storm of the season form out in the Gulf, this would be a good time for us to talk about the difference between flood zones and evacuation zones. One of them affects your homeowner's insurance, and the other is about the likelihood of you having to evacuate in the case of a storm. So we'll start out with flood zones. These are determined by FEMA, and the most common ones here in the Tampa Bay area are AE, X, and X500. If you take a look on this map, you'll see that there is a VE, and usually homes are not built in VE areas because those are very likely to flood in the case of pretty much any kind of hurricane, even a Category 1. So it's not common to see houses built in those areas, but there are some. And of course, they're required to be built elevated up off the ground so that they won't get flooded with every single storm. The next one is A and AE. Those are the two where if you've got a mortgage, you're going to be required to have flood insurance because those are more likely to be flooded. Now, if you want to know the technical parts about, percentage per 100 years and all that stuff, you can look on FEMA.com. But the reality of it is those areas are likely to flood sometime in your lifetime, and you're going to have flood insurance if you have a mortgage. The next most common is X. And those are the areas that do not require flood insurance if you have a mortgage. Those are generally high ground. They're not likely to flood. Now, I do want to stress, though, that just because it's an X flood zone does not mean that you should not get flood insurance, because some areas get street flooding. Another consideration that we have is the likelihood that areas could change from one that does not require flood insurance into one that does. Take a look at the map here. You can see that there are some areas that do not require flood insurance, but they're like little islands. There's a likelihood that in the future FEMA is going to revise the maps and those will close up and get engulfed by flood areas, which means those homeowners are going to have to purchase flood insurance. So that's something we always look at because we want to look to the future and see if there's any likelihood that they may be in for an unpleasant surprise. Because after all, it's our job to look out after buyers. Now, evacuation zones. Evacuations go from A to E. And those are designed for keeping the evacuations a little bit more orderly. Because if we have a major storm coming and everybody tries to evacuate all at once, it's just going to be mayhem. The roads will be clogged up and nobody's going to get anywhere. So the lowest areas are asked to evacuate first. Those are the A areas. So those people get out first, then the Bs, then the Cs. And even in Hurricane Milton, which was in my opinion, a once-in-a-lifetime event. I've lived in Florida my whole life. Like I said, I've never seen anything even close to Hurricane Milton. Even in that one, we only evacuated up to the Cs. So if you're in a D or an E, chances are you're not going to have to evacuate ever. The only exception to that is mobile homes and manufactured homes. With those two styles of homes, those two are recommended to evacuate no matter what, just because they're a little bit more susceptible to wind damage. So that's the difference between flood zones and evacuation zones. If you have questions or if you want me to look up where you stand on this, let me know. I'm happy to help you. I'll tell you anything you want to know. If you've got questions, put them in the comments down below or contact me. I'm always happy to answer any questions. So thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of this, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.